You pour that glass of orange juice every single morning and feel proud of yourself. You eat dinner at 9:30, sometimes 10, then fall asleep on the couch with the television still on. You haven't exercised in months, but you tell yourself the walk from the parking lot counts. Every single one of those habits is quietly wrecking your liver and your blood sugar, and you can't feel a thing. There is a silence inside the body that most people never hear. It is not the kind of silence that brings peace. It is the kind that hides damage. The kind that accumulates in the dark, inside the organs you never think about until something goes terribly wrong. And by the time the noise finally comes, the abnormal lab result, the swollen belly, the fatigue that no amount of sleep can fix, the tingling in your hands at 3 in the morning, the damage has been accumulating for years, sometimes decades.
This is the story no one tells you about getting older. Not the wrinkles, not the gray hair, not the joints that ache when it rains. The real story, the one that determines whether your next 20 years will be lived with energy or spent managing disease, is what happens inside. In your liver, in your pancreas, in the invisible web of hormones and enzymes and chemical signals that keep you alive. And the most dangerous part of that story is this: the very things you do every single day, the habits you consider harmless or even healthy, may be the ones silently pushing you toward type 2 diabetes and fatty liver disease. You are not careless. You are not lazy. You are simply doing what everyone around you does, what advertisements tell you to do, what the packaging on your food congratulates you for doing. And that is precisely the problem. Let me walk you through 5 of those habits.
Not to scare you, not to blame you, but because understanding them might be the single most important thing you do for your health this year. The first habit begins in the morning, and it begins with something that tastes like love. You wake up, you walk to the kitchen, you reach for a glass of juice, orange, apple, maybe a tropical blend with mango and passion fruit. It is cold, it is sweet, it feels wholesome, virtuous, like a gift you give your body every morning before the day begins. After all, it comes from fruit. Fruit is nature. Fruit is vitamins. How could fruit possibly be dangerous? Here is what happens the moment that juice hits your stomach. Without the fiber that exists in the whole fruit, the pulp, the skin, the cellular walls, the complex matrix of pectin and cellulose that slows everything down, the sugar in that juice floods your bloodstream almost instantly. Your pancreas, sensing the sudden spike, panics. It releases a massive wave of insulin to deal with the surge. Your liver, which is the first major organ to receive blood from your digestive tract through the portal vein, gets overwhelmed with fructose, a specific type of sugar it is uniquely responsible for processing. When fructose arrives faster than the liver can metabolize it, the organ does what any overwhelmed system does. It converts the excess into fat, and it stores that fat directly inside its own cells, droplet by droplet, morning after morning. 1 glass of orange juice contains roughly the sugar of 3 to 4 whole oranges, but none of the fiber. You would never sit down and eat 4 oranges in 2 minutes. Your jaw would tire, your stomach would fill. But when you drink that same sugar as liquid, every natural break is bypassed. And this is not just about juice. It is about every liquid calorie that has become a staple of modern mornings. The caramel-drizzled coffee drinks, the acai smoothie bowls with granola and honey, the oat milk lattes sweetened with agave because agave is plant-based and sounds healthy. Your liver does not read labels. It does not distinguish between sugar from a beehive, sugar from an agave plant, or sugar from a factory in New Jersey. Fructose is fructose, and when it arrives fast and in large quantities, your liver begins to develop a condition that looks remarkably similar to alcoholic liver disease, even if you have never had a drink in your life.
This is what researchers now call metabolic-associated fatty liver disease. It affects an estimated 1 in 3 adults in the developed world. And it starts not with a dramatic event, not with a crisis, but with a quiet glass of something sweet, repeated faithfully every morning for years.
until the organ that was supposed to protect you becomes the organ that needs protection.
I had a patient once, Margot, 57, an interior designer with an impeccable eye for detail. She had been divorced for about 4 years after a marriage that had slowly drained the color from her life. She lived alone now with her 2 cats, a gray Persian named Magritte and a calico she called Frida, in a beautifully curated apartment. Margot was not someone you would ever associate with liver disease. She did not drink alcohol. She ate what she considered a balanced diet. She walked occasionally. She was careful, intentional, precise. The same meticulous attention she brought to her design work, she believed she brought to her health. When her blood work came back showing elevated liver enzymes and early signs of insulin resistance, she sat across from me with this expression I have seen hundreds of times. Not fear exactly. Something more personal. More like betrayal. As if her own body had violated a contract she had been faithfully honoring for decades. "But I do not eat junk food," she said, her voice steady but her hands not. "I drink green juice every morning. I have fresh fruit with yogurt. I use agave instead of refined sugar. I buy organic." Every single thing she believed was protecting her was quietly feeding the problem. And the cruelest part was that she had been trying. Genuinely, sincerely trying. That effort was not wasted. It just needed to be redirected. That brings me to the second habit. And this one is even more invisible because it disguises itself as discipline. You skip meals during the day. Maybe you are too busy. Maybe you are not hungry in the morning. Maybe you have heard that eating less frequently is better for your metabolism. Maybe you believe that willpower means ignoring hunger. So you go 5, 6, sometimes 8 hours without eating anything substantial. And then, when evening finally arrives and the day releases its grip, you are ravenous. You eat a large dinner. You eat quickly. Maybe you eat again before bed. A snack, something small, cheese and crackers, a piece of dark chocolate, a handful of nuts. Nothing excessive, nothing that feels dangerous. But your body reads this pattern in a very specific and very ancient way. When you deprive it of fuel during the daylight hours and then flood it with calories after dark, you create a hormonal environment that maximizes fat storage. This is not opinion. This is circadian biology. Insulin sensitivity, your body's ability to process sugar efficiently, follows a natural rhythm tied to light and darkness. It is highest in the morning, when your body expects to receive fuel, and lowest at night, when it expects to rest and repair. This means the exact same meal, the exact same calories, the exact same macronutrients, will cause a significantly higher blood sugar spike and more fat deposition at 9 in the evening than it would at noon. But it gets worse. When you eat late and go to bed on a full stomach, your liver cannot perform its overnight maintenance. During sleep, the liver is supposed to shift into repair mode, processing toxins, regulating cholesterol synthesis, managing glycogen reserves. When it is forced to prioritize digestion of a heavy late meal, those restorative functions get delayed or skipped entirely. Night after night, this creates a backlog of metabolic housekeeping that the liver cannot catch up on. The organ ages faster than it should. It accumulates fat it cannot clear. Margot admitted she rarely ate anything substantial before 2 in the afternoon. She would have her green juice in the morning, perhaps a coffee with oat milk, and then nothing until a late lunch that was more like an early dinner. By 8 or 9 at night, she was eating again, sometimes her largest meal of the day, standing at the kitchen counter with her cats weaving between her ankles. She thought she was practicing restraint and discipline. She believed fewer meals meant a healthier metabolism. In reality, she was inadvertently training her body to store fat with maximum efficiency at the worst possible time. The third habit seems completely unrelated to food. It seems harmless, comfortable even.
but it might be the most metabolically destructive behavior of all. Sitting. Not sitting occasionally. Not resting after a long walk or a productive day. The kind of prolonged, uninterrupted sitting that defines modern life after 50. Hours in a chair, on a couch, in a car, at a desk. The kind of sitting where your largest muscle groups go dormant, where your legs become decorative, where your body forgets it was designed to move. Here is what most people do not understand, and what I wish someone had explained to me earlier in my career. Your muscles are not just for movement. They are metabolic organs. When skeletal muscles contract, even gently, even briefly, they absorb glucose directly from your bloodstream through a mechanism that does not require insulin. This is called insulin-independent glucose uptake, and it is one of the most powerful blood sugar regulation tools in the human body. It requires no prescription, no supplement, no special equipment, just the simple act of contracting your muscles. When you sit for hours without interruption, that mechanism goes dormant. Your muscles stop pulling glucose from your blood. Blood sugar rises. Your pancreas compensates by producing more insulin. Your cells, bathed constantly in insulin they do not need and did not request, begin to downregulate their receptors. They start ignoring the signal, the way you stop hearing the hum of a refrigerator or the ticking of a clock. This progressive deafness is insulin resistance. And insulin resistance is the single doorway through which both type 2 diabetes and fatty liver disease enter your life. Research has demonstrated that breaking up prolonged sitting with just 2 to 3 minutes of light movement, not vigorous exercise, not a gym session, just standing, walking to the window, doing gentle calf raises, stretching your arms, every 30 minutes can significantly reduce postprandial blood sugar spikes and improve insulin sensitivity throughout the entire day. The body does not need dramatic intervention. It needs consistent, gentle reminders that it is alive. Margot worked from home most days. She spent entire afternoons at her drafting table, sketching floor plans, or at her computer, sourcing materials and corresponding with clients. She moved between her desk chair and her couch, between her couch and her bed. She told me once, with something between embarrassment and disbelief, that she sometimes realized at 5 p.m. that she had not truly stood up since morning. Her body was always poised, always elegant, always composed in its stillness. But inside that stillness, her metabolism was slowly suffocating from neglect. The fourth habit is one that almost no one suspects, because it does not involve food, it does not involve exercise, it does not involve anything you can buy or measure or track on an app. It is stress. Specifically, the kind of chronic, low-grade, never-ending stress that becomes the permanent background noise of life after 50. The stress of loneliness that you have learned to call independence. The stress of financial uncertainty that keeps you awake at 2 a.m. doing calculations you have done 100 times. The stress of watching your body change and not understanding why. The stress of caring for aging parents while slowly realizing that you are aging too. The stress of loss, of marriages, of careers, of identities you thought were permanent. When you are stressed, truly, chronically stressed, your body releases cortisol. Cortisol is not inherently harmful. It has a very specific and necessary job in acute situations. It raises blood sugar rapidly to give you energy to fight a predator or flee from danger. That mechanism saved your ancestors' lives. But modern stress is not a predator in the forest. It is a notification on your phone, a bill in the mail, an empty chair at the dinner table, and it never ends. When cortisol remains elevated day after day, week after week, it keeps your blood sugar artificially and persistently high. It directs your body to store visceral fat, the deep, metabolically active, inflammatory fat that wraps itself around your liver, your kidneys, your intestines. It disrupts your sleep architecture. It increases your appetite specifically for high-calorie, high-sugar comfort foods. and it creates systemic inflammation that damages the liver at a cellular level.
Margot did not think of herself as stressed. When I asked, she described her life as quiet, peaceful even. But quiet is not the same as peaceful, and solitude is not the same as serenity. She lay awake most nights running through worries she could not solve. She worried about whether her retirement savings would last. She worried about what would happen if she got sick with no one to call. Her 2 cats were her primary companions, and she loved them fiercely. But she knew, in the honest, silent part of herself, that a cat purring on your chest at midnight is not the same as another human being asking how your day was. The loneliness she would never name out loud was not just an emotion. It was a biochemical event. Cortisol dripping steadily into her bloodstream, like a slow, invisible, relentless poison that no amount of green juice or organic yogurt could neutralize. And cortisol does something else that few people know. It directly interferes with insulin signaling at the cellular level. Even if you eat perfectly, even if you exercise consistently, chronically elevated cortisol can make your cells resistant to insulin in ways that bypass every dietary intervention. It is the hidden saboteur, the one metabolic factor that no meal plan can fully overcome. The 5th habit is perhaps the most heartbreaking of all, because it does not come from negligence or apathy. It comes from a place of genuine effort, of hope, of trust. You try to eat healthy by choosing products labeled low-fat, zero sugar, sugar-free, diet, light, whole grain, heart-healthy, all-natural, or simply clean. You stand in the grocery aisle, reading labels, comparing brands, feeling responsible and informed. You trust those words. You believe that the companies printing them have your well-being in mind, and you construct your entire diet around products that have been engineered, with extraordinary precision and billions of dollars of research, to seem healthy while being metabolically catastrophic. Low-fat yogurt that replaces fat with 11 grams of added sugar to maintain palatability. Whole wheat bread with a glycemic index virtually identical to white bread. Granola bars bound together with high fructose corn syrup and coated with a yogurt glaze that contains no actual yogurt. Salad dressings manufactured with refined soybean oil and sweetened with corn syrup. Diet sodas loaded with artificial sweeteners that emerging research suggests may fundamentally alter your gut microbiome and paradoxically increase both insulin resistance and appetite. The food industry understood decades ago that people would pay premium prices for the illusion of health. And so they created an entire vocabulary, a sophisticated, reassuring language of wellness printed on colorful packages that has almost nothing to do with what those products actually do once they enter your body and reach your liver. Margot brought me a food diary once. She was quietly proud of it. Everything was labeled, categorized, organized by meal, and color-coded by food group. The designer in her could not help herself. And almost every single item on that beautifully organized list was a product she had chosen specifically because of what its label promised. Light cream cheese, sugar-free strawberry jam, diet peach iced tea, fat-free vanilla granola, 90-calorie snack packs. She had constructed an entire way of eating out of marketing copy, and her liver was paying the accumulated price of years of metabolic confusion. When we sat down and went through that diary together, item by item, reading the actual ingredient lists rather than the front of package claims, I watched her face change. Not anger. Margot was not someone who expressed anger easily. Something quieter and more devastating. A slow, dawning recognition that she had been systematically deceived. Not by any single company, not by any individual lie, but by a system designed to profit from her confusion, her trust, and her desire to do the right thing. This is the part of the conversation where I want you to pause. Not to feel guilty, not to panic, not to throw away everything in your pantry, but to understand something that could genuinely, measurably change the trajectory of your health. These 5 habits, the sweet morning drinks,
The skipped meals and late-night eating, the hours of unbroken sitting, the unacknowledged chronic stress, the misplaced trust in food marketing do not operate in isolation. They interact, they compound, they amplify each other in ways that create damage far greater than any single habit could produce alone. The juice spikes your blood sugar. The sedentary hours prevent your muscles from clearing it. The cortisol from chronic stress keeps insulin resistance locked in place. The irregular meal timing trains your metabolism to hoard every calorie that arrives after dark. And the processed diet foods layer metabolic confusion on top of an already overwhelmed system. Together, they create what clinicians call a perfect metabolic storm. And that storm has a name. It is called metabolic syndrome, the dangerous cluster of interconnected conditions that includes chronically elevated blood sugar, high blood pressure, excess visceral fat around the organs, and abnormal cholesterol ratios. It is the precursor to type 2 diabetes. It is the biological environment in which fatty liver disease flourishes. And it is shockingly, heartbreakingly common in people over 50 who genuinely believe they are doing everything right. But here is what I need you to hear most clearly, more clearly than anything else in this conversation. This is reversible. Not with a miracle supplement, not with a 14-day detox, not with a single dramatic gesture. It is reversible through understanding, through small, consistent changes that respect the way your body actually works. Eating whole fruit instead of drinking juice, and letting the fiber do the work nature designed it to do. Having a real, balanced breakfast and shifting your largest meal to earlier in the day when your insulin sensitivity is highest. Standing up and moving for 2 or 3 minutes every half hour, even if that movement is nothing more than walking to the window and back. Finding one practice, any practice, that genuinely lowers your cortisol, whether that is deep breathing, walking in nature, gardening, prayer, playing music, calling a friend, or simply sitting quietly with something warm in your hands. And learning to see past the labels, to choose real, whole, unprocessed food over cleverly marketed products, to read ingredient lists instead of front-of-package promises. Margot did all of these things. Not overnight, not perfectly, not without resistance and frustration, and days when she wanted to return to the comfortable habits that had felt so right for so long. Over months, slowly, imperfectly, humanly. But her next round of blood work told a story even her skepticism could not deny. Her liver enzymes had dropped back into the normal range. Her fasting glucose had improved significantly. Her energy, the energy she had written off as a casualty of aging, began to return in ways that startled her. She told me something during one of our last conversations that I carry with me still. She looked around my office, the way she probably looked at every room, assessing the light, the proportions, the flow. And she said, "I spent 20 years decorating other people's homes, making them beautiful, functional, livable. I finally started doing that for the one I actually live in." Your body is not betraying you. It is not failing you. It is not punishing you for getting older. It is responding, logically, predictably, faithfully, to everything you give it. Every glass of juice, every skipped meal, every hour spent motionless in a chair, every night of worry swallowed in silence, every label you trusted without turning the package around. The silence inside your body is not permanent. It is not a verdict. It is a question, and it is waiting, patiently, persistently, for you to finally listen. The moment you start listening, truly listening, with curiosity instead of fear, everything can begin to change. You are not too old for this. You are not too far gone. You are exactly where understanding begins.